How did the hantavirus outbreak begin in the first place? We've said that the most common forms of hantavirus are transmitted from rodents, rats and mice and things like that. So were there rats on board the ship? Were there rodents? How did this outbreak start? Guys, I'm Dr. Jen Caudle. I'm going to tell you what we think transpired. Let's remind ourselves of how hantavirus is generally transmitted. The most common forms of hantavirus are transmitted from the inhalation of viral particles that can come up from rodent droppings, nesting materials, urine, feces, things like that. However, there is a strain of hantavirus that can be spread from person to person, meaning once you have it, you could give it to someone else. How do we think this outbreak began? The World Health Organization has said it believes that the hantavirus outbreak might have begun with one couple, a Dutch couple who had boarded the ship that had the hantavirus outbreak. Now, this couple both became infected with hantavirus and they died from their infections. Before boarding the ship, this particular couple had gone on a bird watching trip throughout many different countries, Argentina, Chile, Uruguay. Not only that, the bird watching trip included visits to sites where the species of rat that's known to carry hantavirus was present. So we were kind of maybe understanding how some of this might have been put together. They were going to bird watching sites, they were exposed to rats that could have contained hantavirus. Not only that, the ship that had the outbreak actually was traveling to different sites as well, so that may have played a role itself. But back to this couple, okay? It's thought that perhaps this couple, during their bird watching expeditions, were exposed to hantavirus and they acquired the infection. Because hantavirus has a very long incubation period, which means that the time between they were exposed to the time they developed symptoms was so long, well, they boarded the ship, perhaps not knowing that's what they had, okay? It also turns out that the strain of hantavirus that they acquired happens to be a strain that can be transmitted from person to person. So they got hantavirus very likely from rodents, but because it was a certain type of strain, they could then pass it on to other people. Because they got on a cruise ship, that created an environment where transmission from person to person could happen, and perhaps more easily than it could in any other environment. Remember, on a cruise ship, you're sitting next to people, you're talking to people, you're in close quarters, there's a lot of people, etc. And we think that that's how the hantavirus outbreak began. It should be said that everybody who came in contact with this couple is not necessarily going to get hantavirus simply because they were around them. There are a number of different factors that have to be in place for the transmission. However, it is possible, and that perhaps is why we are seeing what we are seeing. I think it's also important to remind you that at the time that I'm making this video, the risk of hantavirus to the general public is low. Okay, remember that was kind of a perfect storm and the sequence of events, etc. It is important to talk about this outbreak because hantavirus itself is a very dangerous, even deadly virus. It's got a mortality rate of around 40% or so. A lot of people die from this, and it's very severe, and it's important for any symptoms or people infected to be caught early. Now, what can you do? Well, it's important to understand that if you are around rodents, no matter where you are in this country or elsewhere, it's always important to take precautions. I have a video on how to take precautions against rodents and rodent droppings, etc. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll make sure I link the video here. If you're watching on Facebook, that video is also on my feed. So just take a look at that. I will do daily updates as long as it's relevant about hantavirus. We are certainly saying prayers for anyone and everyone involved on the ship who's been infected or not. We are certainly praying for you. Guys, make sure you follow me on Facebook, subscribe to my channel on YouTube. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, etc. Also, I have a weekly newsletter that goes out. You can sign up for that at drjencaudle.com.